have a confession to make. There is a huge privilege that has allowed me to do the kind of work that I do, which is freelance video editing, that I have not properly addressed as a true privilege on this channel. I'm very aware that I worked very hard and paid a lot of money to get where I am today, and have endured a lot of other bumps in the road and forks in different directions to get where I am today. However, one thing that I don't often address when it comes to me personally is the timing that I became a freelance video editor, which was really only maybe 5 years ago that I started to pursue it more full time. But every year that passes, it seems like the online space, the creative space, the video editing world space is getting more competitive every year. And who's facing the brunt of that but you guys? Most of my viewers are starting at a more beginner level, or we're doing something else in a different field and are now turning it back around to want to get into video editing and are having a hard time getting into the industry, getting their foot in the door and getting their first job. Is it all a matter of timing? Or are there other things that can be done in order to propel yourself a little closer to that dream video editing job of yours? Well, I thought that it would be interesting to do a little hypothetical. If I were starting from scratch and going back in time to before I had any video editing skills, how would I go about going from point A to point now B of having a full-time job as a freelance video editor? If this sounds interesting to you, not surprised, it was in the thumbnail, you clicked on it, obviously. Let's get to the video. But I do ask, if you have a second, if you can hit the like button below so this video can spread to as many people as possible. And if you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I would so appreciate you for doing that. Now, let's get into it. Now, if we're starting from the very scratch of things, then we're starting from when I first learned video editing, which for me was in high school. And really the only reason I learned it was because I happened to end up in broadcasting because I like media, shocker, and was given the opportunity to learn Adobe Premiere Pro in that class. Obviously, I wouldn't take that back, but that did only get me so far. So the biggest question then comes up is, Colleen, would you go to film school if you were doing it all over again? While there are many things that I value from my time in school, the connections that I make, the opportunities, the internships, the fact that I was a very shy kid and this forced me into more uncomfortable situations that helped me grow way more than I ever thought that I would. Did I need to pay $100,000 to do that though?
Absolutely not.
If we're just thinking about getting a video editing job here, in terms of learning video editing skills, I would say that my chances were way better of learning more video editing by watching tutorials on YouTube than they ever were going to be and were going to a film school. So no, I would not go to film school if I were doing it over again. Considering the fact that you can learn just about any software right on YouTube if you're willing to take the time to sit and learn it. And there's also online classes that you can take and courses and groups and things like that to learn from other people. It really seems a little unnecessary just specifically for learning video editing. Again, there are plenty more things to value about going to school that I do encourage people to do, but learning video editing, not really one of them. Now, maybe I would go to a community college or a much cheaper school just to get a general degree or a degree in something a little bit more vague like communications or business. Business degree could be helpful for me. And for anybody going into the freelance world, you are essentially running your own business. I would value that information and certification and education over film school education because honestly, who's even looking at your degree? I don't even know where it is. I think I threw it away. So I could say that I got a degree in anything, really. And the benefit of going to a cheaper school is that you still are going to be a student. And so you can utilize student discounts for things like the Adobe Premiere subscription or the whole Creative Cloud subscription. You can get a discount on that. And that would significantly help me to be able to keep the platform going as I spend time learning it. Now, there's a lot of directions you can go from here, which I think is where a lot of people get a little stuck because you are learning the software, you're moving along, you're testing out some things, and you kind of are at a point where you're like, what do I do with this information? What do I do with this knowledge and this skill? Do I go try and make a feature film on my own? Do I just start piecing together pieces and making prompts for myself to have something to edit? Do I start just taking my family's home movies and turning them into found footage, creative, experimental pieces? It's hard to think where my brain would go as a then 18-year-old. And so I kind of have to go off of because I know what I know now. I know for me personally, it was very important for me to just dive into work and start working under someone to learn what I need to learn a lot faster rather than just playing around on Premiere. So naturally, this makes me want to go and find an internship somewhere. Now, this is the double-edged sword of not going to school. So that's kind of why I say maybe go to a cheaper school and learn video editing on the side, because you can still get an internship doing anything, and you're more likely to get an internship if you're doing it for class credit or you have at least the legitimacy of being a student, because it's kind of a sketchy situation to just go in and work for a company for free unless you have kind of the guidelines of what the school recommends. Of course, you can still get an internship doing just about anything. You can reach out to creators, smaller businesses. And if I decided not to go to school, I could whip up those guidelines by myself. I could say, I'd like to do an internship with you where I work for you for 3 months, this many hours a week, and I could help you with this, this, and this. And it's free labor, essentially. So most companies or businesses would be interested in some free help. Now, of course, we can't forget that I would be working at this time. So I would be learning video editing. I would be working wherever I'm working. I would be possibly going to school, and I would be trying to do a free internship. This all sounds like a lot of work, but people do it every day. I did it whenever I was in school. If you are passionate about video editing like I was at the time, or just passionate about getting a job, you're kind of willing to do that work and do the hard for a little bit if you know that it's going to be a concrete thing to pay off for you in the future. And I still believe that to be true. And I did go that route originally in my real life. While I was in school, I took advantage of the fact that they did offer internships, and I was just jumping into as many as I could for that because I knew I wanted them on my resume, because I didn't want to come out of school with nothing on my resume. And that's part of the benefit of not going to school full time, is that you do have the ability to then go ahead and work. And so you can immediately get more concrete work examples on your resume. But whatever you decide to do, school or no school, I would definitely say in my case, what I would do, I would still be going hard on those internship opportunities. One thing that's so interesting to note that I didn't have back then that I do have now is we have things like CapCut and things like TikTok and things like Instagram where you can just edit for free. Yes, it's all on your phone. That's kind of annoying, but we're now in the age of editing on our phones and doing edits as fast as possible and as efficiently as possible and with the most trending effects as possible. So absolutely, I would be learning and teaching myself how to edit on these platforms. Now I do have to think, okay, Colleen, you're 32 now and you were 18 at the time. So none of those things came out quite yet. So it's kind of hard to gauge how I would be going about doing that back then. Although at the time when I was younger, I did always think in my head, wow, I could still be doing marketing work for smaller companies around my city, like local places. I could be creating YouTube videos for them. And that's, I guess, the closest thing we had at the time was Facebook and YouTube until Instagram came out. So it's kind of a crazy time back then. What did we do? What did we watch? But let's say I just kicked it until Instagram and TikTok and all that came out, editing for YouTube or whatever else. So by the time those things came out, I would be taking full advantage of them to start editing on them, learning how to edit on them, learning how to edit like everyone else on them. Because one thing that I learned very quickly through TikTok and Instagram was, what the heck is going on with video editing?
What's going on in there? What?
For a while, I really thought my job was going to be in danger because you could just edit everything so easily on Instagram and TikTok. And the kind of editing was changing so drastically and going back to like chintzy trends and like weird CapCut effects. I was like, what the heck is my idea of good editing when I was like 15 years old, is that now circling back and becoming cool now? Of course, that all kind of went really fast and we kind of got through all that, all like the cheap effects of these platforms. And now we've kind of settled into the nitty gritty of like what's good on TikTok and on Reels. Most of that just being good sound trends, good music, and fairly simple edits. But yet so many companies are still looking for those very simple edits. So if anything, I would be getting into the social media game quicker than I did in real life because I I am a social media video editor, and that just all comes very naturally to me. And I like working with businesses and helping them kind of get more on their feet with the whole social media craze. So I think if I did start it over, I would have really honed into the social media world a little bit sooner rather than deciding really only a handful of years ago that I wanted to be an online freelance video editor. Circling back in my real life, while I studied video editing in school, once I got out of school, real life kind of scared me into needing to have a job ASAP. So I was working at a video place while I was in school. I started working at a bakery once I got out of school. I started working in the show industry, like whenever shows and movies would come into our town, and I would work in their costume department because that was kind of a niche job that needed filled, and I just jumped right into there. And so I worked on jobs like that for a few years. So by the time that all circled around and I kind of got back into video editing more full time, I feel like I was behind on the social media curve for a moment, and it took me a little bit to get into that. And then obviously once I really dove into it, I loved it, and I loved working with companies and doing that kind of editing. But again, I think I was a little slow on jumping on that train. And if I wouldn't have been distracted having this great job with great money over here, which is great, it would have been nice to be a little bit more directly on the train, if you will, of social media and learning that and perfecting that quicker. A couple other random things that I noted that I would definitely do and that I would encourage you to do if you're just starting out, especially if I wasn't going to a film school, I would still want to be reaching out to people to try and make more connections so that I could potentially work with people locally. I don't know if your city has a 48-hour film festival like my city does, but we've had that going for a long time now, and I have worked on just a couple of them, but I wasn't really totally aware of what they were. I wasn't really in that world for a while, and honestly, being on set is just the most exhausting thing to me. I cannot stand it, and like staying up all night editing, hate it so much. However, in order to make good connections, sometimes you got to go through all that. And especially if I was younger at the time, then I would have been a little bit more flexible to that. Again, if I were doing this all over again, if I were starting from scratch, that is definitely one way that I would be jumping into meeting people and getting on sets, which is so important in just film education and film production education, teaching you exactly how the film process works, because I thought I knew how it worked until I got on a set and I was like so lost. The amount of steps and people that are involved in professional filmmaking is absolutely stunning to me. And it's great to learn all that and how all the pieces fit together. And while it'd be great to work on there in any position, they may be looking for a video editor or extra video editing help. And so you may be able to help them directly with your video editing skills, thus gaining more content for your demo reel. And so that's something that I would probably do if I were trying to make additional connections. So I would highly recommend that. Also, I was inspired by this next one from a very significant event that happened early on in my life. I believe I was in 8th grade, and we were all given the assignment to shadow a person in our dream job. And I ended up getting in contact with a news video editor at my local news station. I got to go down there and shadow him for a few hours and kind of see what he did. Do I think that you guys should do this as well? Absolutely. I would do this again if I could, especially being younger, being in high school. If I'm deciding not to go to college, doing this instead of college, shadowing as many people as possible. It was super insightful, really motivating to like see your dream job in action. And how I would go about this would be I would go on LinkedIn, which the profile I would have perfected and made look as good as possible. I'd have my awesome looking LinkedIn profile, and I would go search for local video production companies and things like that, and other news stations or post houses, anywhere where there could be a video editor. And I would reach out to them and I would say who I am. I'd say I'm interested in video editing. I would be really honored to sit and shadow somebody for a few hours. If that is an option, please let me know. Thank you very much. If you're not asking to sit and shadow somebody physically, you can always just reach out to fellow video editors that you can connect with on LinkedIn and message them and say, hey, explain yourself situation. In my case, I would be just starting out. I'm not going to film school. I'm really interested in video editing. I have Premiere Pro. I'm learning more about it and I'm trying to get a job. Do you have any advice for me? And see if they respond. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But this could be a huge help as well. For one, getting more knowledge of how to get into this crazy competitive industry. And number two, just to gain a little bit more reputation with these other video editors, especially if they are in the same city as you. You now have established a relationship with them. Maybe they are interested in helping you get wherever you are trying to go. You just really never know. And so it never hurts to just reach out to people as long as you are kind and professional and courteous in your messaging to them. And I really stress that. Please be kind and professional and courteous. Don't just start DMing a bunch of people being like, hey, can you help me get a job? Ask very specific questions, very specific advice that you are seeking so that you can get the best possible response out of them. The last thing I'll note is a really small thing that I would do in order to start getting my name out there is I would just start cold emailing companies. And I did this. I definitely remember sitting on my computer for many hours doing this, finding all the local companies around my area and cold emailing them. And a lot of it was just on their info at whatever their company was.com, which all their emails are going towards. And so it's very unlikely that they will read them. But I would definitely be cold emailing all of the local companies in my area, just saying that I am available if they need any help. I'm available if they can offer any internships, and I'm happy to help with whatever they need if they are looking to hire someone. Now, again, I'm kind of showing my age because at the time, I don't know if LinkedIn was as established as it was now. And so a great benefit to cold emailing now that you can do is you can look up a company, see the ones you like, and then you can go over to LinkedIn, look up that same company and find the actual people that are working there. And so rather than just emailing their info at contact email, you can go to LinkedIn, find a person of authority, whether that be a lead video editor there or a manager or the boss or owner. I would just email one per company, but I would reach out to that one person and say, hey, I'm interested in whatever you're interested in, and just try and open up a dialogue between the two of you to see if you can get any information about if they're hiring, what they would be looking for, that kind of vibe. All in all, if you made it this far, then you probably noticed that most of the things I'd say I'd start over and do over again are all really focused on just what I would do to get the job. I say that because that was my main concern back in the day. It's still my main concern now. I truly understand that learning how to get into the workforce and how to keep your reputation throughout your work career is essential and was essential for me when I was first starting out. And that was my highest priority. If you are over 30 or around my age or older, what do you think of this advice? Does this advice click with you? Would you do something totally different? I would love to hear your stories about what you would change if you were starting things over or going back in time with the information you know now, maybe without the information you know now. And if you are younger, if you are 18, early 20s, does this information seem helpful to you? Are there specific questions that you are left wondering now that I've kind of said my whole spiel of what I would do? Either way, I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave them in the comments down below. If you haven't already subscribed and clicked the like button below, please do that. You would be supporting my channel for doing that, and I so appreciate you. Thank you to my team. Again, I am Colleen, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Have the best one.